Okay, today we're talking about arrays. We keep talking about them again. Very complex, very important. Not complicated, but important data structure in computer science. Something which you definitely need to know. Okay, so let's repeat what we learned last time. That's how we declare an array. Double square brackets, right? So whenever we see the square brackets, that means that we have an array. Double mylist is equal to new double 10. Okay, so 10 is the size. Okay, that statement declares an array. So this particular statement, the only thing it does, it just creates the amount, it allocates some amount of memory in the RAM for your array. So how big that array, so how much memory it allocates, right? So we can calculate that. We need 10 doubles. Okay, so each double is 8 bytes, sorry. So that's why we're talking about 80 bytes, right? 8. Okay, so then, okay, what do we have here? Then we're going to have like 10 doubles under one hood, right? So that hood will be called like my list, and then you can access each one of them separately, saying my list of 0 is equal to 5.6. That's actually how you pronounce it. My list of 1, my list of 2, my list of 3. My list of 3 is equal to 13.2, my list of 4 is equal to 4.0. So you can access each one of them separately. Okay. Now, when talking about processing array, again, there is a rule. Whenever you want to process an array, what do? You always use loops. Always use loops. If you want to print an array out, use a loop. If you want to fill that array with the values which the user types in, you also need a loop. If you want to add, like, let's say 1 or 2 or 3 to each one of the elements of the loops, you also use a loop, right? Anyway, so when you want to initialize an array with the input values, you need to use a loop, for loop, for I is equal to 0, I is less than mylist.length, I plus plus, input is equal to next double. So my list of I, since I changes all the time, my list of I represents the element that represents the slot in the array where you put in the value into. Okay, initialize an array with random values. My list of I is equal to mat.random times 100. Okay, so my list of I will be changing every time because I changes, right? So basically, we're talking about my list of I. I is the position, right? So look, so when talking about my list is just like a set of variables. I brings us to a particular position in that variable. When we say my list, that's basically refers to 10 variables, not one. Okay, and now if we want to say that I want to change that particular one, so we can't change like all 10 of them at the same time, right? So we need to specify the address. We need to specify which one out of those 10 we're talking about. So when we say my list of I, that means I'm talking about the ith element, ith, right? So the index of I, the ith element out of those 10. So my list of I is equal to mat.random times 100, right? So that creates a random variable between 0.0 and 100.0, excluding 100.0. Okay. Now, if we want to print out the array, and that's definitely what you'll be using a lot, right? If you want to print that out, then what do? You also use a for loop. For I is equal to 0, I is less than list.length, I plus plus. Print out my list of I and plus the space. Summing all the elements up. That's how you do it. You create a variable called total, which is equal to 0, and then in the for loop, you add in all the elements. So you add in each individual element, my list of I, to the value of total. At the very beginning, total is equal to 0, and let's say, I don't know, if your array consists of two values only, 5 and 6, you add in 5 to that 0, and then you add 6 to that 0, so in total you get 11. Finding the largest element, right, and finding the smallest element is done exactly the same way. You basically saying, okay, so I have 10 values. Okay, let's imagine that, let's call that my first element to be the largest one. Okay, so that's why my max is equal to my list of 0. Okay. By the way, indices go from 0 to the length of the array minus 1. So if you have 10 elements in the array, that means the indices of them will be from 0 to 9, including 9. So 10 is excluded. Okay, because again, in computer science, you start counting from 0, not from 1. So max is equal to my list of 0, and then my I is equal to 1, I is less than my list.length, I plus plus. Okay, if my list of I is greater than max, so basically you're saying that, okay, so let's call my first element to be the max, and then let's compare, so let's traverse, let's visit each element, and if that element is greater than my max, which I think my max is, in this case, that max should be that element. Okay, so for example, if I have, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, 10, 8, and 20. Okay, 10, 8, and 20. I will call 10 my max, then I'll compare 8 to my max, so 8 is less, okay? Then I compare 20 to my max. 20 is greater than 10, 20 is greater than max. That's why max should be 20, and at the end, max will be 20. Hope it makes sense. For each loop, what is that? So that's kind of a shorter version of the for loop. What happens here is that we're basically saying, hey, I don't want to mess with indices, I don't want to mess with I just want to like have I don't want to say like, I don't know, my list of I want to say just like, I don't know, E, right? Or like list, or like something like that. So I don't want to mess with indices. In this case, you can use for each loop. Okay. Now, the new stuff, copy and erase. So here's the problem. Let's say I'm creating two arrays, int array, which is equal to new int of, well, let's do this. Let's immediately assign the values. Let's do 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, so in this case I have an array of integers. There are 4 integers, 10, 20, 30, 40, and then I'm creating another array 2, new int of also 4 integers. By the way, usually there is no space like this, although technically it's not a mistake. Java will not be complaining if you have a space there. Anyway, and then what you decide to do, I want to copy the content of the array, let's call it array 1 to the array 2, because in the array 2 I currently have what? I currently have 4 zeros. Of course, it depends on the compiler. In Java, though, my experience is that with the 99% of the compilers, whenever you create an array but you don't fill that array with values, if those are numbers, then it will be zeros. Okay, so let's say you want to copy, you want to copy the entire content from over here to over here. Okay, so what do you think you're gonna do, right? You may be thinking, okay, so if I have a variable a which is equal to 5, then variable b, okay, so I probably should say b is equal to a, right? And in this case, a is equal to 5, b will be equal to a, so b will be 5 as well. Okay, so following the same logic, okay, you're probably thinking that, okay, so let me try to do the same thing. Array 2 is equal to array 1. Okay, is that true? Do you think that'll work? Okay, let me try. Let's see if there are any compilers. No, it's not. No, they're not. However, do you think it actually worked? The answer is no, it did not. It did not work the way we wanted it to work. Okay, and here's why. Let me open Paint Online. Okay, let me okay, yeah. So imagine that I have RAM. So here's my RAM. Okay, and imagine that I created array 1. So that's my array 1. And imagine that I created array 2, which is empty. And over here I created my values. So 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay. Of course, again, like if the RAM is like, I don't know, 8 gigabytes, these chunks of data will be like tiny, super small. But again, just for the visual purpose of the simplicity of a visual, being able to represent it visually, let's draw them that big. Okay. So, and over here we have zeros, right? Okay. So when you say array 2 is equal to array 1, you're thinking that probably that all of the content will be copied from here to over here, right? That's what you're probably thinking. Unfortunately, that's not the case, okay? And unfortunately, it's very easy to make a mistake. So let's say that I actually truly believe that it worked, and then I might be thinking, okay, let me try to print that out. Let me check if it works. So let me try to print out the content of the array 2. Int I is equal to 0, I is less than array 2 dot length. I plus plus. Okay, and then I would say print ln. Okay, array 2 of I. Okay. So the idea is this. I would be probably thinking, if I was like learning that, I'll be probably thinking, okay, so if I see 4 zeros, that would mean that it didn't work, like this didn't work. If I see 10, 20, 30, 40, that means it actually worked. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, perfect. So then again, if I didn't know as that much, like I would think that okay, it worked perfect. That's fine. Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no. And here's how I can prove it. So now let's change array 1 of 0 to 0. Okay. So what happens now is that array 1 is this, array 2, right, would be also this. And now I'm changing array 1 of 0 to 0. So I'm basically changing this 10 to 0, right? And let's try to print out. Well, let's just bring this up. By the way, if you're using Eclipse, try to push. What would that be? Alt. Okay, so like go to one of the lines, push Alt or Control. Control. I think on Windows will be Control. I think on Macs it's Alt. Push Alt and then push up or down arrow keys. In this case, you'll be moving like this. You'll be moving the line like that. And I think I'll teach you a couple of like very cool shortcuts later as well. Anyway, so I changed array 1 of 0 to 0. So now you're probably thinking that this has changed, but array 2 has not changed, right? Because I didn't say array 2 of 0 is equal to 0. So array 2 should be the same. However, if I change it and if I try to print it out array 2 later, what do I see? I see 0 here as well. Okay, so I changed array 1 of 0, but array 2 of 0 has changed. How's that possible? And that's exactly what I want to tell you now. So here's what happens. That's array 1. That's array 2. Okay, so when we're talking about anything else apart from the primitive data types, anything else about the primitive, so int, double, float, character, so everything which you see as data types which are spelled with a lowercase letter, they're called primitive data types. They're primitive, they're very simple. Whenever we're talking about anything apart from them, which are strings, did you notice that string is spelled with capital S? When we're talking about objects, when we're talking about like system.out.println, so system.out is an object. When we're talking about the scanner, so scanner is also like spelled with capital S, right? In that case, the way they work is the following. When you say, and when we're talking about arrays as well, so array is not a primitive. So array of integers is not primitive anymore. Integer is, but array of integers is not. Okay, so whenever we're talking about anything apart from the primitive data types, so for example, whenever we talk about arrays, what happens is the following. When we create array 1 and we fill out the values, array 1 is technically just a link. It's just a reference pointer. So basically array 1 contains the address. So array 1 is not the array itself. It's an address to an array. Same thing for anything non-primitive. Let's say if it is a scanner. So input. If you create a scanner called input is not a scanner. Input contains the address to that scanner. So array 2 also doesn't contain those zeros. Array 2 contains the address to those zeros. Okay. And that's why when you say array 2 is equal to array 1, what happens is that array 2, the content of array 2, so the array 2, which contains the address, is being changed to array 1, which is also an address. That's why array 1 and array 2 start pointing to exactly the same location of the memory, so they basically become the same thing. And that's why if I change the value of this 10 for array 1, array 2 will also be changed. However, you don't really know that you're not talking about these 4 zeros anymore. You don't really know that. like that's being changed. So that's why it's very easy to make a mistake, to be confused, because you're thinking that you're working with this, right? No, you actually changed what array 2 is pointing at. It points to the same thing as array 1 points at, and that's why if you change array 1, array 2 will be kind of changed, although again they basically becoming two names for exactly the same thing. And then if you change, for example, array 2 of 0 from 10 to something else, then array of 1 of 0 will be changed as well. Okay, so that's something which is very important, and that's something you should definitely you should definitely keep it in mind. Do not be confused by it. Okay, and that's the same thing for all the not primitive data types. An array is not a primitive data type. Okay, so that's why if you want to copy the content of the array 1 to array 2, here's what you have to do. You need to say int I is equal to 0 array.length. Then you need to say array array 1 of I is equal to array 2 of I. So in this case, what happens? You copy in not arrays, you copy in integers, right? Because it's an array of integers, right? That's why you'll be copying primitive data types, and that's why it will work correctly. In this case, you're going to copy the content of the array, but not the address of the array. So in this case, what's going to happen is over here, so all of them, all of these values will be brought over here. Okay, they'll be copied. And after that, array 1 will be completely separate from array 2. If you change array 1 is changed. If you change array 2 is changed. They have like nothing to do with each other. Okay, so here you're gonna have 10, 20, 30, 40. Okay, cool. Hope it makes sense. So that's how it's done. Copy and erase. Okay, so when you say list 2 is equal to list 1, that's not possible, right? Although again, the Java's not going to complain about that. It's kind of going to assume that you know what you're doing, although you probably don't. You're probably thinking it's copying the content. So what's going to happen is this: you have list 2, list 1. List 1 points to content of list 1. List 2 points to content of list 2, and then list 1 and list 2 become pointing to exactly the same thing. Okay, and then list 2 is actually being deleted because Java virtual machine will automatically understand, okay, so there is no pointer, there is no variable which points to list 2. What's the point of list 2? Let's get rid of it. Okay, so that's why here's how you need to copy an array. You need to create a source array, target array, right? So they should be of the same length, and then you say for I is equal to 0 less than length plus plus target array is equal to source array. Okay. Yeah, so if that's too complicated, what you can do, you can use a built-in function in Java. There is another approach to call array copy, okay, in this java.length.system class, okay? So you basically need to say system, system array copy, then you provide in the name, okay, of the source array, the array you copying from. So in my case, it will be array 1. Then so that's the first argument. Third argument would be the array you copy into. Okay, so target array in my case will be array 2. Now here, source position and target position and the length. So basically the parameters source position, target position indicate the starting point positions in the source array, in the target array respectively. In other words, it's possible that, for example, if I have like one array like this and another array like that long, okay? So what if I want to copy, I want to copy the entire array, but I want to copy that like starting from over here. So I do not want to, so I want to copy this over here, and I do not want to change anything which is located over here. Okay, so that's possible. So the starting position of the source array will be 0. The starting position of the target array will be this position, right? So the first position of that element you copy into, okay? And then you need to provide the length. How many elements to copy from here to over here, okay? Yeah, so length. Okay, so for example, if I want to copy again the the entire array from one array to another array, I would say source array 0, target array also to 0, source array that length. So like I want to copy the entire, all the elements from source array to target array. Okay, so also what you can do, you can pass arrays to methods, and that's actually becomes passed by reference, not passed by value. Okay, remember when we talk about pass by value, we're passing the value, and that's why whatever you can mass, you can do whatever you want, like within the you can do whatever you want inside the method, and nothing will be changed outside. In this case, no. When we're talking about non-primitive data types, we're passing the reference. Okay, in this case, you can do whatever you do in the method, in the second method, will actually affect the original array or the original object. Okay, just as you can pass primitive data types to methods, you can actually pass arrays to methods. For example, the following code will display the elements in the array. So print array, int array. Okay, so you see we don't really specify how big array should be, right? How big is that? Like how many elements? We don't specify that. We're just saying, hey, please, can you give us the reference? Can you give us the address to that? Okay. Yeah, so in this case, the reference is being passed of the array. So not the value, not the content of the array, but the reference. So the address. So basically this, where is that? Here's what's being passed, like this address. This address is being passed. Okay, and then print it out. You can evoke the passing by array. For example, you can do something like this. Print array. You can actually create an array right there. New int 31246. 642, okay, and then you can like create it right here within the parentheses, and then you can pass it immediately to the print array. Okay, Java uses pass by value to pass arguments to methods. There are important differences between passing the values variables to primitive data types and passing arrays. For an argument of a primitive data type, the value is passed, and that's why it's called pass by value. For an argument of an array type, the value of the argument is a reference to an array. So again, when we say array 1, technically, it's not an array itself. It's an address. It's a reference to the array. This reference value is passed to the method semantically. It can be best described as passing by sharing. Okay, so usually it's called pass by reference, pass by address. That is, the array in the method is the same as the array being passed. Okay, thus, and that's an important point. If you change the array in the method, you will see the change outside of the method. Okay, and here's an example. So it's very similar to what we had before, but now we're going to have an array as well. Okay, so int x is equal to 1, int y is equal to array of 10 integers, m, x, y. So we pass in x, pass in y, we pass in integer x, we pass in array of integers y. So here you see we're also accepting one integer number, and here accepting an array of numbers. So how do we know that's an array, right? Because of these brackets. System.out.println. Yeah. So what do we do here? Number is equal to 1001, but numbers of 0 is equal to 4 5s. Okay. So here we're changing this number to 1001, which used to be 1. And here we're changing something which used to be 0 because numbers of 0, right? It was not created, so by default it's 0. Now we're changing that to 5555. Okay. So the question is, what do you think will be printed out here? For x, will that be 1 or would that be 1001? And for y of 0, would that be 0 or 5555? So the answer is, I hope you guys get that, but that point is x will not change, right? X will be 1, y of 0 will change. It will be 5555. Okay. Same thing for returning. You can actually not only pass, right, but you can also return an array. Okay. So here, for example, we're passing an array int. Oh yeah. So hold on. What's the premises? The point of this function is to reverse the order of the elements in the array. So for example, if I have an array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, reverse, what this function does, it returns back an array with the same elements in the opposite direction. So it'll be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so how's that done? But the most important here is that we return an array, right? So it's possible to pass an array and the only thing you need to add is these two brackets. It's possible to return an array, the only thing you need to add is these two brackets. Int result is equal to new int list.length. Okay, so you're creating a new array called result. For I is equal to 0, j is equal to length minus 1. Okay, so there are two variables now, I and j, and here is so-called comma operator. It's very, very rare in computer science to see that, but it's still useful. So what comma operator does, it's just a comma, like as in English. So if you have a comma separated list of statements, right, it just does the first statement first, then finishes up, second statement first, third statement like next. Okay, and it's possible to have a list of statements in each section of the for loop. So here you see we have I is equal to 0 and j is equal to a result.length minus 1. Okay, so we're basically creating two variables instead of one. Memorize the syntax, memorize that, it's very useful. I is less than a list.length, so in the second section of the for loop there is only one statement, and then in the third section I plus plus, j minus minus. Okay, and then a result of j is equal to a result of I. Yes, is that reverse? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that's what I want you to do for the practice exercise. I definitely want you to learn this method, and I want you to understand how specifically it does that, because it's pretty interesting. So like you have I, which traverses the array one way, you have j, which traverses it the other way, and that's how you assign it. So like yeah. I hope well, yeah, you'll see that, but definitely do that. I'll maybe ask you to do something similar on the quiz. Yeah, very important to understand how it works. And that's it for today. I want you to do this, just copy that and see how it works. I want you to do that, also the same thing, and reverse number entered. Write the program that reads 10 integers and displays them in reverse order in which they were read. Okay, so I want you to practice with this as well. Very similar to, well, you'll probably need create an array, maybe you'll need to fill that out. How do you know the length of the array? Well, you probably need to understand how many integers has their user typed in. Okay, then you reverse it, and then you want to like display them backwards. Okay, and average, okay, average, same thing. So like you well, not the same thing, you accept an array of integers, okay, calculate the average out of them, and then return back the average. Cool, hope you guys enjoy that. Have fun, hope you're staying safe. I'll see you later. Bye bye.